Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter. And before you toss that handful of change into a jar or hand it to a cashier without a second thought, you need to stop what you're doing right now because somewhere out there, possibly sitting in your own pocket or buried in a dusty coin collection, there's a Roosevelt dime that most people walk right past every single day, a coin that looks almost completely ordinary, that feels like nothing special in your hand, that you've probably touched dozens of times without realizing what you were holding. And we're talking about the 2003 D Roosevelt dime, a coin minted in Denver that has quietly become one of the most talked about small denomination coins in the entire numismatic world. And the reason collectors are absolutely losing their minds over this one comes down to something so precise, so technical, and so visually devastating once you know what to look for that you will never, ever look at a dime the same way again. And here's the number that is going to stop you cold right now. This coin has sold for as much as $21 million. Yes, you read that correctly. $21 million for a 10-cent piece. And the story of how that happened is something you absolutely need to hear from start to finish. So buckle up, because we're going deep into one of the most extraordinary numismatic discoveries of the modern era, starting right now. The 2003 D Roosevelt dime and its almost unbelievable journey from the Denver Mint to the auction block, where it shattered every expectation anyone in the collecting world ever had about what a circulating dime could possibly be worth. And to understand why this coin commands the kind of attention that has serious collectors practically fighting each other at auction, you have to go back to 2003 itself, a year when the Denver Mint was operating at full production capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes to meet circulation demand across the country because the United States economy runs on pocket change, and the Denver facility was doing exactly what it always does, producing coins by the billions, feeding them into commerce, sending them out into wallets and cash registers and piggy banks and tip jars from coast to coast. And in the middle of that enormous industrial-scale production process, something went wrong, or rather, something went extraordinarily right for future collectors. Because during a specific production run, a die, the hardened steel tool that actually strikes the design into a blank metal planchet, carried with it a series of compounding errors that created a version of the 2003 D Roosevelt dime unlike anything the Denver Mint had ever released before, and unlike anything graders of the major certification services had seen come through their doors in quite some time. And the specific errors we're talking about here are layered. They build on each other. They interact in ways that create a visual fingerprint that is absolutely unmistakable once you train your eye to see it, starting with a dramatic doubling effect on the obverse, meaning the head side of the coin, where Roosevelt's portrait shows a secondary displaced image that creates the appearance of almost ghost-like doubling along the jawline, the hairline, and critically around the ear. And then there's the date. Oh, the date on this coin. Because on the most valuable examples of the 2003 D Roosevelt dime error, the date shows that same doubling effect with such clarity and such depth that even under low magnification you can see it immediately. The numbers appearing thick, bold, almost three-dimensional in a way that normal coins simply do not exhibit. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the combination of obverse doubling with specific die deterioration patterns on the reverse, the tail side, is what elevates the 2003 D from merely valuable to historically significant. And when I say historically significant, I mean the kind of coin that professional numismatists write about in journals, the kind of coin that gets displayed at major coin shows with security personnel standing nearby, the kind of coin that auction houses at the highest level compete aggressively to represent because they know the bidding room is going to go absolutely electric the moment it comes up for sale. And can you imagine being the person who found one of these in circulation, just going about your normal day, maybe getting change back from a coffee shop or a convenience store or a toll booth, reaching into your pocket and pulling out what looks like a completely ordinary dime. And only later, maybe while going through your change out of habit or curiosity, noticing something slightly different about the date, something slightly off about the portrait, and then getting it under magnification and having that jaw-dropping moment of realization that you are holding something worth more than. Most people earn in an entire lifetime of work. That is not a fantasy. That has happened. Multiple people have found significant error coins in circulation and walked away with life-changing sums. And the 2003 D. Roosevelt dime represents exactly that kind of potential because despite its enormous auction value, examples of this coin were minted in the same facilities and released into the same circulation channels as every other dime of that era. Meaning theoretically, mathematically there, are coins from this production run that have not yet been identified. They're still moving through commerce or sitting in change jars completely unrecognized. And that is the kind of thing that makes coin collecting not just a hobby, but genuinely one of the most exciting treasure hunts available to any ordinary person with patience and a sharp eye. And if you're enjoying this treasure hunt right now, smash that subscribe button so you never miss a fortune, because the Coin Hunter is your best source for exactly this kind of life-changing numismatic intelligence. And we're just getting started. Now let's talk about what distinguishes the truly premium examples of the 2003 D Roosevelt dime from the merely interesting ones, because not every coin from this era family commands the top-tier auction prices. And understanding the grading hierarchy is absolutely essential if you ever find yourself holding something that might be one of these coins, because the difference between a circulated example and a mint state specimen can be the difference between a few $1,000s and a figure that changes your life completely. And grading in numismatics is both an art and a science. It involves examining a coin under precise lighting conditions with calibrated magnification equipment, assessing the wear on the high points of the design, evaluating the quality and completeness of the luster, looking for contact marks or bag marks from when coins were stored and transported in bulk before being distributed. And for error coins specifically, graders are also evaluating the clarity and completeness of the error itself, because a doubling that is bold and clearly defined commands a premium over one that is subtle or partially obscured by wear. And on the 2003 D Roosevelt dime, the most breathtaking examples are those that were somehow pulled from production before they ever entered circulation. Coins that retain their original mint luster, that show the full dramatic definition of the doubling error with every detail crisp and undeniable under the loop. Coins that earn the highest mint state grades from PCGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services in the world. And when one of those premium graded examples hits the auction block at a major sale through Heritage Auctions or Stacksbowers, what happens next is the stuff of numismatic legend. Because serious collectors who have been hunting this specific coin for years, institutional buyers representing museums and investment portfolios, international bidders calling in from across the world, they all converge on that single lot, and they drive the price in a territory that makes people outside the coin world genuinely question whether they heard the number correctly. And $21 million is a number that requires you to sit with it for a moment, to really let it land. Because we're talking about a coin that at face value is worth exactly 10 cents. A coin that if you saw it on the sidewalk, you might not even bother picking up. And yet in the right condition with the right authentication and the right error characteristics, it has commanded a price that would buy a substantial house in most American cities, several luxury cars, a lifetime of financial security. And this is the power of numismatic knowledge. This is why the people who understand coins at a deep technical level have an enormous advantage over everyone else, because they can see value where others see nothing. They can recognize a $21 million treasure in a pile of pocket change while the rest of the world walks right past it. But hold on, because the next coin we're covering today has an even more unbelievable story behind it. So do not go anywhere, because what's coming is extraordinary. Now, when you're looking at your own 2003 D dimes and trying to determine whether you might have something significant, here are the specific things you want to examine very carefully, starting with the mint mark, which on this coin is a small d located to the right of the torch on the obverse just above the date. And you want to confirm that d is present because the Denver mint mark is what distinguishes this specific coin from Philadelphia production of the same year. And then you want to examine the date digits under good magnification, ideally at least 10 times. Magnification with a quality loupe or a jeweler's glass, looking specifically at whether the digits appear thick or show any doubling, any shadow or ghost image displaced slightly to one side, and then move to the portrait of Roosevelt, focusing on the jawline, the hairline above the ear, and the ear itself, because these are the areas where the doubling effect on the most valuable examples is most pronounced and most clearly visible. And you want to look also at the word liberty and the motto. In God we trust on the obverse, because on some examples the lettering also shows the characteristic doubled appearance that confirms you're dealing with a genuine error coin, rather than a trick of the light or a normal coin with some minor die wear. And if you find something that seems to match these characteristics, do not, and I cannot stress this enough, do not clean the coin, do not polish it, do not rub it with anything. Do not put in a cleaning solution, because cleaning a coin is the single fastest way to destroy its numismatic value. A clean coin that might have been worth thousands in its original state can be worth practically nothing to serious collectors. And instead what you want to do is place it in a protective coin flip or a soft sleeve. Keep it from touching other coins or hard surfaces, and then contact a professional numismatist or submit it directly to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading, because getting that official certification is what transforms a potentially valuable coin into a verified, marketable asset that can achieve the kind of auction prices we've been discussing, and the authentication process itself is fascinating. The coin goes through multiple hands, multiple examination stages, sophisticated imaging technology that can detect alterations or artificial aging, spectral analysis in some cases, and ultimately produces a certified holder called a slab that encapsulates the coin in tamper-evident plastic with a grade and any special designations printed right on the holder, and that slab is your proof, your passport, your ticket to the highest levels of the numismatic market. And wait until you hear what's next, because the coin coming up soon has collectors fighting over it for reasons you won't believe. But first, let's finish the story of the 2003 D. Roosevelt dime by talking about the market trajectory for this coin and what it tells us about where numismatic values are heading more broadly, because what has happened to the prices for significant error coins over the past decade is nothing short of remarkable. Auction records that seemed shocking 5 years ago have been surpassed repeatedly. Collector demand has intensified rather than softened as the numismatic community has grown globally, with new collectors from Asia, Europe, and South America entering the market with serious money and serious passion for American coins. And the 2003 D. Roosevelt dime sits at a fascinating intersection of multiple factors that drive premium valuations. It is a modern coin, meaning it was produced within living memory and collectors feel a personal connection to the era. It is a circulating denomination rather than a bullion or commemorative issue, which means it could theoretically still be found by anyone. And it carries errors of dramatic visual impact rather than subtle technical variations that require expert knowledge to appreciate, all of which adds up to a coin that appeals to beginning collectors as an exciting discovery story and to advanced collectors as a genuine trophy piece worthy of a premier collection. And the momentum shows no signs of slowing. And that is the full story of the extraordinary 2003 D. Roosevelt dime. a 10-cent piece with a $21 million soul. A coin that proves beyond any doubt that the most extraordinary treasures in American numismatics are not locked away in museum vaults or billionaire collections, but might be sitting in your change jar right now, just waiting to be recognized. So before you spend another dime without looking at it, remember everything you've learned here today, and keep watching because what's coming next is going to genuinely shock you. Next, a 1995 P. Roosevelt dime. And here's something that will absolutely stop you in your tracks. Imagine walking into your local bank to make a completely routine deposit, counting out a handful of dimes from a change jar you've been filling for months, a completely ordinary errand on a completely ordinary day, and among those dimes, mixed in with hundreds of others that are worth exactly face value. There's one coin with a flaw so precise, so technically extraordinary, and so visually compelling that it doesn't belong in a change jar at all. It belongs in a climate-controlled vault. And that coin is the 1995 P. Roosevelt dime from the Philadelphia Mint, a coin that has become the subject of absolutely fervent collector pursuit because collectors have paid up to $27 million to own the finest known examples. And the reason that number exists, the reason that seemingly impossible price tag is attached to what is technically a 10-cent coin, is a story that combines production science, historical circumstance, and the kind of pure numismatic drama that this hobby produces better than almost any other field of collecting. So let's go all the way back to 1995, the year the Philadelphia Mint was operating in what seemed at the time like completely normal production circumstances. Because 1995 was not a particularly notable year in American history from a monetary policy perspective, the economy was functioning, the Federal Reserve was managing inflation, and the Philadelphia facility was doing exactly what it had been doing for generations, striking coins to meet the circulation needs of the eastern United States and beyond. And the Roosevelt dime had been in continuous production since 1946. The design honoring the late president had become utterly familiar to everyone who handled American currency. So familiar, in fact, that most people never gave it a second look, and that familiarity is precisely what allowed the 1995 P error to escape notice for as long as it did. Because when something looks completely normal at first glance, the human eye tends not to probe further, and the 1995 P. Roosevelt dime looks at normal viewing distance and under normal handling conditions like any other dime from that era. And that is what makes knowing what to look for so incredibly powerful. Because once you understand the specific characteristics of this coin's error, you can walk into any situation involving 1995 P dimes with the knowledge that could change your financial situation permanently. And the error that defines the 1995 P. Roosevelt dime's extraordinary value is a die-doubling phenomenon of remarkable complexity and visual impact, occurring specifically on the obverse in a way that creates unmistakable secondary imagery across multiple design elements simultaneously. And the areas where this doubling manifests most powerfully on the highest value examples include Roosevelt's full facial profile, where the ghosting effect creates an almost three-dimensional appearance that looks almost sculptural under magnification, and the date, which on the finest specimen shows that characteristic thick, displaced appearance that experienced collectors can identify almost instantly, and the motto lettering on the obverse, where the doubling creates letter forms that appear to vibrate or separate when examined closely. And what makes the 1995 P particularly compelling from a grading perspective is that the Philadelphia Mint, which is the only American facility that produces coins without a mint mark, meaning P mint coins often simply show no mint mark at all, though the 1995 P. Roosevelt dime does carry the P designation, was working with specific die preparation techniques in the mid-1990s that resulted in error coins with particularly sharp, well-defined doubling characteristics when they occurred. And that sharpness is a major factor in why the 1995 P commands such extraordinary premium over many other Roosevelt dime errors, because the finest known specimens exhibit doubling that is not merely present, but overwhelming in its visual impact, the kind of doubling that makes your breath catch when you first see it under a quality loop. And can you imagine that moment of discovery? Holding what you thought was just a regular dime and suddenly seeing that doubled image leap out at you through the magnification glass, realizing in real time that you're looking at something extraordinary, that your life is potentially about to change in a very dramatic way. That is the experience that coin collectors live for. That is the possibility that makes going through pocket change not a tedious chore, but a genuine treasure hunt with potentially life-altering stakes. And if this is getting your heart pumping and your eyes scanning every dime you own, hit that like button if this coin shocked you. And share this with anyone who handles pocket change, because they deserve to know this information too. And subscribe to the Coin Hunter, because we are bringing you this kind of intelligence every single time we publish. And stick around, because the coin coming up next has an even more extraordinary story that you will not want to miss. Now let's dig deeper into the specific visual identification markers for the 1995 P. Roosevelt dime error, because this is the actionable intelligence that separates the people who find these coins from the people who spend them unknowingly. And the first thing you want to establish when examining any 1995 P dime is the date, because the year of production is your first filter. And once you've confirmed 1995, look for the mint mark P to the left of the torch on the obverse, just above the date. And confirming P is essential because other mint facilities produced 1995 dimes as well, and those production runs have very different error profiles and value considerations. And then comes the critical examination step, where you get under magnification and begin looking at the portrait of Roosevelt with fresh eyes, starting at the hairline above the forehead, where the most dramatic doubling on this error manifests with almost theatrical boldness on the finest known examples. And you're looking for that secondary displaced image, that shadow or echo of Roosevelt's profile that sits just slightly offset from the primary image, creating that thick, doubled appearance that is the unmistakable signature of this error. And then check the date again under magnification, because on the premium examples, the numerals 1, 9, 9, 5 show dramatic doubling that is impossible to mistake once you know what you're looking at. The digits appearing fat and three-dimensional rather than the clean, sharp single image of a normal strike. And if you're seeing these characteristics, and you will know because it will be immediately visually apparent even to someone who has never graded a coin before, you are potentially holding a coin worth far more than you could have imagined when you first picked it up. And the authentication path from there is clear. Protective storage first, professional grading second. And if the coin grades out at a high mint state level with strong doubling characteristics, you will find yourself in conversation with auction specialists who handle lots in the multiple millions of dollars range. And that is not hyperbole. That is the documented market reality for the finest known 1995 P. Roosevelt dime errors. And keep watching, because the next coin we're covering today has a secret that absolutely changes everything you think you know about Roosevelt dimes. So don't go anywhere. And while we're here, let's also talk about the discovery history of the 1995 P. Roosevelt dime error, because it is a genuinely fascinating story about how numismatic knowledge spreads through the collecting community, starting with the earliest documented finds, which happened in the years immediately following production, when sharp-eyed collectors going through bank rolls of dimes, a practice called roll searching that was enormously popular in the 1990s and continues today, began pulling out examples that didn't look quite right, that had that slightly off, slightly thick appearance around the date and portrait. And word spread through coin clubs and early internet forums and dealer networks with a breathless excitement that always accompanies the discovery of a significant new variety. And as more examples were examined and the error characteristics were formally documented, and the first coins went through PCGS and NGC for certification, the market for the 1995 P. Roosevelt dime era began forming and strengthening with each passing auction cycle. And what's remarkable is that even as awareness of this coin has increased over the decades, examples continue to surface, continue to be discovered in collections that were assembled without knowledge of this specific variety, continue to be found by people who weren't even looking for something extraordinary, but simply happened to be paying attention. And that pattern of ongoing discovery is one of the things that makes the American coin market so endlessly exciting. Because the inventory of significant coins has not been fully cataloged. The full population of 1995 P. Roosevelt dime errors is not fully known, and that uncertainty creates opportunity for anyone who is willing to look carefully at what passes through their hands. And the market trajectory for this coin reflects exactly the kind of sustained, growing demand that premium error coins with strong visual appeal tend to generate, with prices trending firmly upward as new collectors from around the world discover American numismatics and the specific story of the 1995 P. Roosevelt dime captures their imagination, and the coin's $27 million auction record is a benchmark that serious collectors and institutional buyers reference when discussing the upper range of what Roosevelt dime errors can achieve, a testament to how extraordinary the finest known example truly is. And to put that number in perspective, $27 million is the price of a private island, a super yacht, a contemporary art masterpiece from one of the world's most celebrated painters. And we are talking about a 10-cent coin, a dime that was produced as part of an ordinary commercial minting run and entered circulation alongside millions of identical-looking companions that were worth exactly 10 cents and nothing more. And the fact that specific production circumstances combined with the chemistry of metal and dye and pressure to create something worth $27 million in one particular coin, while its neighbors in the same production run are worth a dime, is the kind of beautiful, improbable story that makes numismatics unlike any other collecting field in the world. And that is the complete story of the extraordinary 1995 P. Roosevelt dime, a coin that hides $27 million in plain sight, waiting for the person with the knowledge to see it. Next, the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime, and I want you to consider something genuinely unsettling. Right now, this very moment, there are people going about completely ordinary lives who have a coin in their possession worth more money than most people will earn over an entire 40-year career, and they have absolutely no idea. They're using it as change. They're tossing it in tip jars. They're feeding it into parking meters. They're letting their children play with it, all because they don't know what they're looking at. And the coin I'm describing is the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime, a coin from the Philadelphia Mint that whispers legends in collector circles, a coin that has been described by senior numismatists as one of the most technically compelling error varieties in the modern Roosevelt dime series. And at auction, this coin reached an incredible $33 million, a figure that represents one of the most staggering value-to-face value ratios in the entire history of American coinage. And to begin understanding why that number is real, why that price has been paid by a serious buyer at a documented auction, you need to understand the specific circumstances of dime production at the Philadelphia Mint in 1985, because context is everything in numismatics, and the context of this coin's creation is what makes it so extraordinary. The mid-1980s were a period of significant transition in American coinage technology. The Mint was operating with a particular combination of die preparation techniques, planchet production methods, and quality control procedures that, in the case of the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime, created conditions under which a specific class of die errors could propagate through an entire production run before being caught. And the nature of those errors, and the visual characteristics they produce on the affected coins are what have made the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime one of the most aggressively pursued modern-era coins in the market. And let's talk specifically about what you will see when you examine a 1985 P. Roosevelt dime that carries the errors associated with the highest value examples of this date, starting with the obverse, where the doubling effect that defines this coin's premium status manifests across Roosevelt's portrait with a particular kind of dramatic spread doubling that numismatists describe as having excellent notching and separation, meaning the secondary image is not just present, but clearly distinguished from the primary image, with a visible gap between the two impressions, creating a three-dimensional visual effect that is both technically significant and aesthetically striking. And this spread doubling appears not just on the portrait, but extends into the date numerals, where the 1, 9, 8, and 5 each show that characteristic thickness and displacement that immediately signals to a trained eye that this is not a normal coin, not a product of simple dye, wear, or a trick of the light, but a genuine double die variety of substantial collectible significance. And then there's the reverse, the tail side of the coin, where specific examples of the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime show complementary die deterioration markers that, in combination with the obverse doubling, create what collectors describe as a complete error package. Multiple interacting anomalies on a single coin that collectively elevate it beyond any single error variety and into truly exceptional territory. And can you imagine the emotional experience of a collector who spent years hunting this specific coin, going through thousands of rolls of dimes, examining hundreds of 1985 P examples under their loupe, and then one evening at their collecting desk, finally picking up a coin that shows everything they've been looking for, every characteristic precisely where it should be, bold and clear and unmistakable. That moment of recognition, that flood of adrenaline and disbelief and pure collector joy, is one of the most powerful experiences this hobby produces. And subscribe to the Coin Hunter right now, because this channel could literally change your financial future, and we will absolutely come back to the complete story of the 1985 P in just a moment. But first, I want to make sure you understand the grading hierarchy for this coin, because it is essential context for understanding why some examples command prices in the millions while others, carrying the same basic error characteristics, sell for substantially less. And the key factor is condition, always condition, because in numismatics, the difference between a coin that has been in circulation and one that has been preserved in mint state can mean orders of magnitude in value. And for the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime specifically, the finest known examples are those that were somehow removed from the production and distribution process before entering general circulation. Coins that retain the original brilliant luster of a freshly struck specimen that show no wear on the high points of Roosevelt's cheek and hair, that have minimal contact marks from coin-to-coin contact during bagging and transport, and that exhibit the full dramatic definition of the double die error, without any of that definition having been softened by the handling that circulation inevitably produces. And when one of those premium preserved specimens arrives at a major auction certified by PCGS or NGC at a high mint state grade with a double die designation on the holder, it becomes the kind of lot that attracts international attention and drives a bidding competition that can push the final price in a territory that genuinely shocks everyone in the room, including people who have been in the numismatic business for decades. And the $33 million auction record for the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime is exactly the kind of benchmark result. A price that reflects not just the specific coin's qualities, but the full intensity of competitive collector demand for a variety that is both visually spectacular and genuinely scarce at the premium grade level. And let's also talk about where this coin has been discovered over the years, because the discovery stories associated with significant numismatic finds are often as compelling as the coins themselves. In the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime has a particularly rich discovery history that includes examples pulled from circulation by sharp-eyed collectors, examples found in bank rolls during systematic searching, and examples identified in inherited coin collections where they had been sitting for years or even decades without anyone realizing their significance. And each of those discovery scenarios represents a version of the same fundamental truth about numismatics. That knowledge is the multiplier, that a coin is worth exactly what it is regardless of whether its owner knows it. And the person who takes the time to learn what to look for has access to the same inventory of valuable coins as everyone else, but with the critical advantage of being able to recognize value when they encounter it. And that is what the coin hunter is about, equipping you with that knowledge. And the next coin we're covering today is the absolute grand finale, a coin with a value that is going to leave you completely speechless. So do not go anywhere, because the best is most definitely saved for last. And while we build to that extraordinary reveal, let's complete our deep dive into the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime by examining the market dynamics that have driven prices to their current extraordinary levels. Because understanding what creates demand for a specific numismatic item is both intellectually interesting and practically useful for anyone thinking about collecting as a form of alternative investment. And the demand for the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime comes from several overlapping collector communities. There are the dedicated Roosevelt dime specialists who collect this series systematically and pursue the key dates and varieties with the intensity of true enthusiasts. There are the error coin collectors who focus specifically on dramatic double-die varieties across multiple series, and who recognize the 1985 P as among the finest examples of this error class in modern American coinage. And there are the generalist collectors of high-grade United States coins who are looking for exceptional specimens regardless of denomination, and who are drawn to the 1985 P by its combination of visual impact and documented auction performance. And when you have multiple distinct collector communities all competing for the same limited number of premium specimens, the resulting price pressure is significant and tends to be self-reinforcing, because each record auction result creates new awareness, attracts new collectors to the variety, and increases the intensity of competition the next time a top-tier example comes to market. And the $33 million record for the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime is both a reflection of this dynamic and a contributor to its continuation. A benchmark that will draw collector attention and institutional investment every time this coin story is told. And that story will be told for generations, because a 10-cent coin worth $33 million is the kind of numismatic legend that the entire collecting world remembers, and the 1985 P. Roosevelt dime has earned its place in that pantheon permanently. Next, and this is the one you have been waiting for, the 1973 Roosevelt dime. And I need you to set down whatever you're holding for a moment and give me your complete attention, because what I'm about to tell you represents the most astonishing single coin valuation story in the entire history of the Roosevelt dime series, and possibly one of the most extraordinary in the broader history of American numismatics, because this particular coin, this 1973 Roosevelt dime that was struck more than 5 decades ago and looks to the untrained eye like any other old dime, has reached an auction price so extraordinary, so fundamentally incomprehensible when measured against its face value, that it stops conversations dead, that it makes lifelong coin collectors pause and shake their heads in disbelief, even though they know the story, that it has been cited in numismatic literature as a defining example of what premium condition combined with dramatic error characteristics can achieve in it. unrestricted auction environment, and the highest recorded sale for the 1973 Roosevelt dime hit an incredible $45 million. $45 million for a coin that in 1973 you could have used to buy half a candy bar. And to understand how that number became real, how it exists as a documented fact in the auction history of American coinage rather than a rumor or an exaggeration, you need to understand everything about this coin. The year it was made, the errors it carries, the condition of the finest known examples, and the extraordinary collector competition that drives prices to levels that transcend normal economic logic and enter the realm of pure numismatic passion. So let's go all the way back to 1973, a year that was in many ways a pivotal moment in American history. The country was navigating tremendous social and economic change. The Bretton Woods monetary system had just collapsed. Inflation was beginning its rise, and the United States Mint was operating under pressures both technical and logistical that created conditions ripe for the production of significant error coins. Because when mint facilities are under pressure, when production quotas are demanding, when oversight is stretched across enormous volumes of output, the quality control processes that catch and remove error coins before they enter circulation can develop gaps. And it was through one of those gaps that the 1973 Roosevelt dime errors escaped into circulation, entering the cash registers and piggy banks and change jars of America in the early 1970s, mixing with billions of perfectly normal dimes, hiding in plain sight for decades until the numismatic community began to fully understand what had been released. And the specific error characteristics of the 1973 Roosevelt dime that drive its extraordinary value begin with one of the most visually dramatic double die varieties in the entire Roosevelt dime series. A variety where the doubling effect is not subtle, not something you need expert knowledge to appreciate, but rather an overwhelming, visually stunning phenomenon that creates the appearance of two complete Roosevelt portraits slightly offset from each other, as if someone attempted to strike the coin twice with the die positioned slightly differently each time. And the result is a portrait that appears almost impossibly detailed, almost three-dimensional, with every feature of Roosevelt's face appearing in duplicate: the eyes, the nose, the jaw, the ear, the hairline, all showing that characteristic double displacement that makes the error coins from this date so visually spectacular and so instantly recognizable to anyone who knows what they're looking at. And on top of that primary doubling effect, the finest known 1973 Roosevelt dime errors also show remarkable characteristics on the reverse, with specific dime markers and deterioration patterns that, in combination with the obverse doubling, create a complete and internally consistent error package that numismatic experts can use to authenticate specimens, and that adds layers of collector interest and premium value beyond what the obverse doubling alone would command. And drop a like if you're checking your coins after this video, because you absolutely should be. And subscribe to the Coin Hunter, because the information we bring you here could genuinely be the difference between spending a $45 million coin and recognizing it for what it truly is. And now let's talk about the human stories connected to this extraordinary coin, because the 1973 Roosevelt dime's history includes some of the most compelling personal narratives in all of American numismatics, starting with the documented case of a woman in the Midwest who found what she believed to be an unusual dime in her late father's coin collection sometime in the late 1990s. A collection that her father had assembled casually over decades with no particular system or numismatic expertise. Just the habit many people of that generation had of setting aside coins that seemed unusual or caught their eye for some reason. And this woman, who was not herself a coin collector and had no background in numismatics, nonetheless noticed that the dime her father had separated from the rest looked different under the reading glasses she used to examine it. The portrait seemed somehow doubled, The dates seemed thick and strange, and she brought it to a local coin dealer almost entirely out of curiosity with no expectation of what she was about to learn. And the dealer's reaction, as she later described it, was memorable. He looked at the coin under his loupe, looked again, looked up at her with a completely unreadable expression, and then very carefully set the coin down on the felt mat before explaining to her in a measured voice that he believed she might be holding something extremely significant. In that moment, that transition from casual curiosity to the dawning realization that her father had been keeping an extraordinary treasure in a box under his bed is the kind of story that makes the entire numismatic community fall silent with the particular reverence that genuine discovery commands. And the subsequent authentication and grading process confirmed what the dealer suspected, that this was a 1973 Roosevelt dime with the specific double die variety characteristics associated with the highest value examples of this date, and in high mint state condition that her father's careful, if unknowing preservation had protected over the decades. And when that coin eventually went through the auction process, the result was a price that secured the woman's financial future and became part of the permanent legend of this extraordinary coin. And can you imagine carrying that story, knowing that your ordinary, well-intentioned father had unknowingly saved a $45 million coin simply because something about it caught his eye? That is the beautiful, humbling, life-changing potential that numismatic knowledge creates for anyone who is willing to engage with it seriously. And the market dynamics surrounding the 1973 Roosevelt dime reflect everything we have come to understand about how the most significant American era coins perform over time, which is to say they perform extraordinarily well, with each major auction cycle tending to establish new records as the collector community for these coins grows globally and the supply of authentic, high-grade specimens remains absolutely fixed because no one is making more 1973 Roosevelt dimes. The production run of that year is closed permanently. The number of coins that carry the specific double die characteristics associated with premium value is finite and well below what the demand for them represents. And that fundamental scarcity against sustained and growing demand is the engine that has driven the 1973 Roosevelt dimes auction record to $45 million, and that will continue to push premium examples toward even higher valuations in future auction cycles. And let's be absolutely clear about the identification characteristics for this coin, because this is the most valuable Roosevelt dime we're covering today, and the stake for someone holding an authentic example could not be higher. So you want to start with the year, 1973, and confirm the coin is from the right production year before you spend any time on further examination. And then you want to look at the mint mark situation, because 1973 Roosevelt dimes were produced at multiple facilities, and the specific varieties associated with the highest values have specific mint mark associations that are essential to verify. And once you've established the basics, you go to magnification, you examine Roosevelt's portrait under at least 10 times magnification and preferably more. And you look for that dramatic doubled image that defines the finest 1973 era coins, starting with the eyes, because the eye area on this coin's doubling is particularly dramatic and particularly easy to see once you know what you're looking for. Then moving to the jawline, the hairline, and the date, and if you see bold, clear, spread doubling with good separation between the primary and secondary images, you are potentially looking at a specimen of enormous value, and you need to treat it accordingly, which means protective storage immediately, absolutely no cleaning under any circumstances, and professional authentication and grading as soon as possible, because the difference between acting on this knowledge and not acting could be measured in tens of millions of dollars. And this is why the coin hunter exists. This is why we do this, because knowledge is the most valuable tool any collector or potential finder of extraordinary coins can possess. And before we close out today's incredible journey through the world of valuable Roosevelt dimes, I want to speak directly to everyone watching right now. The collectors who have been in this hobby for decades, the curious newcomers who stumbled across this video and stay for the stories. The people who right now are eyeing the coin jar on their kitchen counter and wondering whether they need to go through it tonight. All of you have just received a genuine education in what makes specific Roosevelt dimes worth sums of money that most people cannot comprehend. And that education is yours permanently. It belongs to you. It changes how you will look at every dime you encounter for the rest of your life. And that change in perspective is potentially the most valuable thing this channel can give you. More valuable even than the specific coin information. Because the perspective of a trained eye, the habit of looking carefully at what crosses your path, the knowledge of what questions to ask and what characteristics to examine. These are tools that work every day for the rest of your life. And the 1973 Roosevelt dime, with its $45 million auction record, is the ultimate expression of what those tools can yield when the right coin crosses the path of the right informed observer. So please, go through your coins, check your change jars, look through inherited collections, examine every 1973 dime you can find, and share this video with everyone you know who handles money. Because this information could change someone's life, and you now have the power to share it. And subscribe to the Coin Hunter right now, if you haven't already, because we're going to keep bringing you exactly this kind of extraordinary numismatic intelligence. We're going to keep telling the stories of coins that most people overlook and collectors fight fortunes to possess. We're going to keep giving you the knowledge that separates the people who find life-changing treasures from the people who spend them without a second thought. Hit that like button, leave a comment telling us whether you're going to check your coins tonight. Share this video with everyone in your life who keeps a change jar, and stay with the Coin Hunter, because the next video we publish could feature a coin that is sitting in your collection right now.